All right. So far, what we have seen that the buckets we have created and the object we try to access from internet browser, we made them explicitly public. Okay. So first, you must have seen that first I created a bucket and then I uploaded an object inside that bucket. I was not able to access that. Okay. Then I explicitly made the object as well as the bucket public, and then I was able to access that via internet browser. So by default, everything is private in S3. It is only the owner of the bucket and the root account holder which can actually access the bucket or the object with the default policies. Now, what I did in the demo is actually not the optimal way of accessing any data from S3, as it's a big security breach. So normally whenever you upload your organization's data into S3 bucket, it's not advisable to make it public. The demo was to give you the complete idea on the S3 service, so we just used the basic permission setup. Now, to manage the restricted permissions in S3, S3 offers access policy options broadly categorized into two parts. First is the resource based, and the other is the user based policies. Now, when we say resource based policies, what do you mean by resource based policies? Now, we can actually create our own policies. We can write that what type of access up to what level we have to provide to the particular user, okay, on that particular S3 bucket. Now those policies can be directly attached with the S3 bucket. This is one way. Another way is user based policies, wherein you go to the IAM console, that is identity and access management. There you create the policy, and in that policy you mention what type of a user access you're going to provide to that on that particular bucket, and attach that policy this time to the user and not to the bucket. So that is something which is user policy. Now let us see all of these things in detail. I mean, you can choose the resource based policy, or you can choose the user based policies, or maybe combination of these to manage the permissions onto the S3 resources. Let's see both of them one by one. All right. Now let's see first of all, how do we create the user-based policy? Okay. So first in our onto our S3 console, we'll simply create a bucket with the default permissions. So first we are creating a bucket. We will not change anything in the bucket. We'll simply keep the default policies, everything as default, and we'll create a bucket. All right, so my bucket is created, which is definitely not public in nature. So simply I go here, I'll try to add a file. Okay, and I have uploaded my file with again the default permissions. All right, here we go. So we have created a file with the default permissions. Now let us go to IAM and we'll create a user here. So let's navigate to users and let's create a user. Okay, now let me give access, what type of accesses to my user, and I'll create a password for my user. Okay, I'm not allowing the user to do the password reset for this demo. In first go, I will not attach any permission with my user. Okay, let's simply name, provide a key value pair so that I can identify my user if I have multiple users. Next, review, and finally create the user. So my user is created, but please note that my user does not have any permissions as of now. All right, now let's close this. Okay, now I'll go to the policies and I will create a policy for my user. So there are two ways to create a policy, that is a user policy. One is a visual editor wherein you can just choose whatever you require, okay, from all the options, and it will create a JSON file for you, okay, or you can directly paste your own JSON here. So I have my own JSON. Let me just post it here. Okay, now what does this JSON say? This JSON is basically saying that effect is allowed and actions are all these. So all these S3 actions are allowed onto my bucket. Okay, and what I'll simply give the name of my bucket. Okay, bucket name is correct, demo bucket ls. I'll have to check that whether on the same bucket I'm providing access or not. Okay, so finally I will review my policy. Okay, I think we haven't provided. Now it's fine. I'll simply say review my policy. I'll give a name to my policy. Okay, and I will say simply create policy. Okay, my policy has now been created. Simply we'll navigate to the user and attach the policy. That is, I'm adding the existing policy which I just created to my user. So in this, what am I doing is I'm allowing a person to access my S3 bucket. Okay. Now let us go finally and log in as this particular user. So how do I log in as a IAM user? On the dashboard, we have the IAM sign in link. We will copy this up and we will open this in a new incognito window. Okay, I will provide the username, the password. All right, so I'm signed in or logged in as the user, okay, and not the root user. Now let me just go to S3. All right, so you can see here that only this bucket, I have access to only this bucket. All others are showing me as error. Okay, I can simply navigate into this bucket, click on the object, and I can actually download this object. So hence this user has access to this particular bucket. All actions are there which this user can perform on this particular bucket. This is how the user-based policies are used on managing the access to S3. Okay, now further, let's see how do we manage the resource-based policies. That was user-based policy. Now let's see the resource-based policy. So within S3, within the same bucket, we have something called permissions tab. Okay, under this permission tab, we have these something called block public access control list, and the bucket policy. Okay, so when you say block public access, as the name suggests, it is actually blocking all type of public access. Okay, whatever access you give via access control list, which you saw in the first demonstration where we made it public, can only be done if you remove this block public access. Okay, so what is there in block public access? It is actually saying that block the public access to the buckets and the objects granted through all types of ACLs or any or other things. Okay, so you have to simply edit this up and uncheck this first if you really want to make your bucket public. But we don't want to do that because we have already done that in our first demo. Okay, access control list says that if you the bucket owner has by default all the accesses you can see here. Okay, but for the if you want to give other AWS accounts the access to this bucket, so you can actually provide the ID of that account, and then select that what type of access you want to give to that particular account. Okay, and if you want to make it public, of course, first you have to unblock it from this tab, and then you have to select everyone what all access you want to give to the general public. Okay, then you have the bucket policy. Now, what is a bucket policy? It is similar to the IAM policy. Okay, you can have your own policy in a JSON format copied here, or you can use the policy generator, which is again a visual UI wherein you can select everything and it will create a JSON for you to choose that what type of access you want to provide to which particular user. Okay, now let me just copy and paste my own bucket policy. Okay, so here you can see that my bucket policy is there. So as we are seeing again, the effect is allow, and I'm allowing someone, and whom I'm allowing, this is something called principal. So principal tag says that to whom you want to allow and what type of action you want to give. Like here I'm saying get object is allowed to for all the users or for everyone. Okay, again this everyone should not be there. Here instead of the star I can provide the ARN, Amazon resource number of a user or any resource who wants to access this bucket. So this is how we restrict the permissions using the resource based policy.